We're good? Yeah, I'm on? Oh, wow. You know what? Sometimes you're so excited about talking listen, last week's show had me just absolutely incredibly on I think you had every single emotion coming from me, from being pissed off with the government and being pissed off with Donald Trump and being pissed off with every single person involved in this, because this shit's ridiculous. It's getting crazy. But this is the Morning Constitution, and thank you very much for joining me. We are here at the Oxford Sports Pub and Secret Society. We're here before the doors open, so you can have an idea of where to go. It's in Altamont Springs at the mall. Come out here and enjoy some fantastic food. We are we are excited to be hosted here, and we welcome anybody who wants to watch our show. If you don't want to watch it at home, you can come in person. So I was talking about the president and the first indictment and all the things that are being piled up on Donald Trump. And it got me thinking, this is a show about history. And Donald Trump is making history now, today. But let's look at history. These presidential elections can get even crazier than they are right now. So I would say, let's talk about who's running for president in the Republican Party. So every single person that is put in to run for president has made a determination that they can do a better job than the former administration. So that's different from any other election, because usually in an election you're running against the incumbent, like you're running against Biden. So yeah, they'll mention Biden, they'll mention the president, but really it's how much can you agree with Donald Trump? How can you walk the line where you don't get the Trumpers angry at you and get alienated? How do you actually distinguish yourself against everybody else? Because Donald Trump, he eliminates people just by the fact that he is not afraid to call names. He's a bully, and people like that. That's why they're fans, because he's not going to sit there and take any crap. He's gonna fight back. And the Republicans have felt that forever they weren't getting any momentum. We were playing nice. We were always doing the right thing, and we were never gaining any legislation. We were losing to the Democrats, and they made the word compromise a terrible word. So today's going to be all about campaigning, because we're going to look back and come forward several times. But now let's just look at a primary. Let's just look at the primary election. They wouldn't even exist today if it weren't for the parties, right? Where did the parties come from? How did they start? All that stuff I could cover, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to cover is I'm going to kind of go into some of the controversial elections that I know about, and I love sharing history. But when Washington gave his speech and said, "Hey, I'm no longer going to be. I'm going to step down. Two terms is enough." He set a precedent, and he also made a speech that was very clear that he saw this party politics as a dangerous road to go down. And the funny part is, he actually used two very partisan people that were becoming partisan to help write the speech so that he could get the right tone. And if you ever want to read something really eye-opening, read the resignation speech of George Washington, because he sets up the whole tone. Because John Adams gets elected. So the vice president becomes the president. It kind of, it kind of looks like that's the way it's going to be. But then John Adams is running for re-election, and Thomas Jefferson, the Secretary of State under Washington, how do I put this? You have a sitting president, and then in the election of 1800, Thomas Jefferson versus John Adams, right? So the election marked just a bitter rivalry between Thomas Jefferson and the incumbent president. So the campaigns were characterized by personal attacks and inflammatory rhetoric. With Jefferson's Democrat Republicans, they accused Adams of monarchism. That he wanted to be a monarch. And Adams Federalists painted Jefferson as a dangerous radical. Whoa. So you have John Adams wants to be king. Thomas Jefferson, he's a radical. He's too radical to be president. Sound familiar? Still happens today. But let's go to the election of 1828, because this really goes right to the gutter of presidential politics. If you're not familiar with 1828, that's Andrew Jackson, who's running against John Quincy Adams. The controversies that come out of this, how do I put it? The consequences that come out of this, the things that come out of here is where the Democratic Party comes from. This is what's going to compel Martin Van Buren to actually organize to get Jackson elected, because he doesn't get elected, and that's controversial in itself. So Andrew Jackson's he's running against John Quincy Adams. It's a rematch between Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams because of the first election. Now, let's go back to the first election because I want to clear. Andrew Jackson loses to John Quincy Adams, but he only loses to John Quincy Adams because of the congressional vote. He didn't. So Andrew Jackson wins the Electoral College, but he doesn't have enough votes in the Electoral College to become the heir apparent president. So it goes to the Congress, and Henry Clay, who, if you don't know Henry Clay, you got to study Henry Clay, because this is a very interesting man. His vote puts it over the top for John Quincy Adams, but then he becomes Secretary of State. That right there puts Jackson over the top. This was this was predetermined. I was not elected because of inside politics. Secretary of States are the ones that always become vice president or president. It was just, hey, this is what's going to happen. Didn't need to happen, but that's what was going on. So John Quincy Adams is very controversial in his presidency. And you think the fact that we've had presidents as recent not getting the vote, he didn't get the entire vote. He didn't get the entire vote for, popular vote, but he became president. Oh my goodness, Bush beat Gore, but he didn't have the popular vote. Gore had the popular vote. He should have been president. No, he shouldn't have been president. But we have an electoral college for a reason, and that electoral college is put into the test for this election. It's the determination. We are a republic. That means that we determine who our elected officials are through democracy, but you don't vote for the president. You You have never, ever, ever voted for president of the United States unless you served as an elector, and that's the only vote that counts. And we learned a lot about that when Donald Trump decided that 2020, he didn't lose that race. You know, Donald Trump's not a loser, so he couldn't have lost anything. So let's get to this, okay? So there's already vitriol between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. But behind the scenes, you have Martin Van Buren, who is putting together this elaborate plan of putting together the party, organizing it, getting a grassroots party, getting it all together, and let's organize to the point where you automatically you win. So they start propaganda. So they start the newspapers. They start giving you the actual news that benefits them. So the funny thing is, you go, well, they're all watching these like news media that just propaganda. They're just watching Fox News. They're just watching CNN or MSNBC. They designed it to have these newspapers delivered to your home that strictly talked about their politics, talk to you as a constituent, to get you to go down that road, get you to be a Republican or a Democrat. So how many times do you open the mailbox and you dread what you see? I don't. David Washington doesn't. We love it when we get our mail, right? Hey, send me all your crap because I want to see what you're saying about your opponent. But that's the thing. They used newspaper because they had Congress make a law that it was actually cheaper. It would be cheaper to send a newspaper through the mail. It was less money to send newsprint through the mail. However, magazines start coming around this time. Magazines are expensive to send through the mail. They still are. But you still receive them. So let me get back to I wandered off it. John Quincy Adams was it was just acrimonious. So Jackson's supporters portrayed Adams as an elitist and corrupt, with Adams' camp attacking Jackson's character, highlighting his temper and his military exploits. The campaign descended into mudslinging. So the allegations of personal indiscretion. Andrew Jackson, he's having, who's sleeping with who. This is something you really got to get. It just brushes the surface. I mean, I'm being nice in the way if I went into detail, you'd be like, really? They drudge up everything. Another one is the election of 1860. So Abraham Lincoln versus Stephen Douglas. The election of 1860 was during the period of highlighted tension over slavery. So it witnessed a harsh criticism and intense debate. Lincoln and Douglas engaged in serious and renowned debates, but their campaigns faced searing attacks from the opposite sides. Here's where historians will tell you that the worst president that we ever had was Buchanan. And the reason they blame Buchanan for being a terrible president is that he lacks accomplishments, but he didn't deal with the heightened tensions of slavery. And because he didn't, he passed the buck, as we say, he gets no credit. He'll always be last. I don't care how many times I don't care how many times you impeach Trump. I don't care how much you want to hate Trump. history's going to put him above Buchanan. So, Grover Cleveland and James Blaine, right? This one is fun because in 1884, yeah, the campaigns between Grover Cleveland and Bain, it was married by scandal and personal attacks. Bain's opponents accused him of corruption and unethical business dealings. So Bain is this, sloppy businessman, and Cleveland, he allegedly had extramarital affairs, negative campaigning, and mudslinging at its finest. Grover Cleveland. Anybody aware of Grover Cleveland? I mean, this one was vitriol, but this is a man that didn't even serve 2 terms in a row, which is what Donald Trump is trying to do right now. So, I mean, we could talk about Kennedy and Nixon, but that really wasn't contentious. What was interesting about that was this was the first time that you had 2 different media. You had radio and you had television competing with delivering your debate. I mean, they had debates, but they were public forums and stuff like that. They were on the radio. So Nixon comes across on the radio, slam dunk. He absolutely beats Kennedy if you listen to him on the radio. But those that watch the television broadcast truly see Nixon as hot, sweaty, kind of like untrustworthy. So all this stuff came across if you were watching him, but if you were listening to him, he had that crisp conversation. But guess what? There were more televisions in homes by that time, so radio didn't dominate. But the Johnson and Goldwater, this is my favorite one because this is, if you're a commercial guy like myself and you love commercials, you got to go to YouTube and you got to see the Daisy commercial. It is only showed it was only broadcast one time. Yet we've all seen it. If you've done anything within politics, you've seen this ad because it is a little girl with a flower counting down, like she's going, love me not kind of thing. And you hear the countdown, and then you see the awesome explosion of a nuke, and everything disappears. Like that commercial was powerful. Again, this is because Goldwater, they considered him a hawk. They said he's not going to be able to control it. He's just going to blow everything up. He's just that bad. Now, Goldwater, he kind of gives the Republican Party a whole new branding as far as where the Democrats, like, they call us names and all this stuff, because name calling was so simple back then. It's like, you lose the argument, you name call. You have the right commercial, you destroy your opponent. But yes, Lyndon Johnson, they created this commercial that was devastating to Goldwater. So that's just a few of the campaigns that I'll talk about, but we could talk about, Bush and Gore. That was, it irritates me when people say that was decided in the Supreme Court. Yeah, it was decided by the Supreme Court to stop the madness. Even all of the independent counts after the election proved that Bush would have still won Florida. Now, if you want to say, well, Broward and Palm Beach County made some really ugly ballots, and they were confusing, and people voted twice for president because it says vote every category, and they had president go onto 2 pages. So I guess I have to vote for president twice. That's like taking the literal portion. You realize you only need to pick one in that category. So let's talk about today, because I like to. So I bring you there, and now let's come to today. So Donald Trump is trying to do what only one other president has done, is to serve a term after being defeated. So Donald Trump, absolutely your favorite, right? There's Republicans that will lay their life on the line for Donald Trump, and then there are those that will support him just because he becomes the nominee. So you're going to have, if he becomes the nominee for the third time, then you're going to have Donald Trump versus Biden. You'll have the oldest presidential election candidates. And I tell you, you can already see Biden, if you're from my perspective, he's not all there. I think Kennedy jumping in that race is a very interesting dynamic. Now, a Kennedy running against an unpopular president is not unusual because, listen, Carter had Ted Kennedy run against him because of the economy. So Kennedys can be controversial. But who's your favorite? So the favorites, as Politico would put it, are going to be Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Now, why does Ron DeSantis jump into a race knowing how Donald Trump campaigns? How does he get into the race knowing that his governorship is going to be all chest pounding by Trump? Oh, he came to me and he begged, and I gave him I gave him my endorsement, and that's the only reason he won. And you know what? That might be true. But at some point, DeSantis becomes his own man. And people in the state of Florida appreciate what he did to get us through the pandemic. You can argue, you can complain, but freedom is freedom. You can say, hey, he kept businesses open. He kept people employed. But he still did shut down the government. But he realized that it couldn't continue to be shut down. So he opened first. He expanded. People give him a lot of credit for that. But what happens is his critics in the Republican Party are going to attack the fact that he went after private business. He tried to tell private business what they can and cannot do by saying, no, if you want to board a ship here in Florida, you can't have a vaccination proof. That in itself is controversial within the Republican Party because, hey, freedom is freedom. Either way, business should have freedom to run their business the way they want to, and the government should have the freedom to run the government as they please, as long as it follows the Constitution of the U.S. and the state. So who else is in this race? So let's cover it real quick. You got, let's see. We'll say contenders. We have, we have Vice President. Let's string him up. Pence, right? Come on, guys. If you're a true Christian conservative and you're saying that stuff about this guy, you are not a true Christian conservative, because like this man has Christian conservatism like in his pocket. He's had this for years. So criticize him all you want to, but this is how do we put it? And this, they'll be joking, but listen, before he became vice president, he was saint. he was Saint Pence. You know, this is a guy that toes the line, gets criticized because he really truly never puts himself in jeopardy, will not shut the door, will not be alone with a woman. You know, he's all about making sure he does the right thing. So if you get mud on him, you better make it stick. But yes, he has a long shot. Well, I don't think he's a long shot. I consider him a contender. But then the next two I say contenders, you can't say they're contenders because they beat each other up, being both excellent candidates from South Carolina. You got Nikki Haley, the only female that's stepped up to run, and you have Tim Scott. I love these two individuals. What they stand for, what they say, what they do. They're action-oriented individuals, and I appreciate that. But South Carolina being up front-loaded like it is, this is where you have that hope that you can squeak it out in one of those states and then take South Carolina. But is Tim Scott in this race just to split the vote? Because I know in the past he's been very supportive of Nikki. So it's kind of questionable. Both excellent candidates. If you're a Republican and you're looking at the candidates and you're not just already chosen Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, that's two great candidates. But now let me run through the rest because you're going to find out how many people from the state of Florida can run for president. So we have Donald Trump, we have Ron DeSantis, I have two from South Carolina. Let's see. Ted Cruz is out. He said he's absolutely not going to run. I guess he knows what it's like to run against. I think he knows what it's like to run against this man. How about this, guys? Have you even ever heard of him? His name is Ryan Blinken. He's a Dallas area businessman. Okay, now, guys, this one's going to get you. Doug Burgum. Now, Doug Burgum, only 3 states have smaller populations than North Dakota, and he was the governor of North Dakota. Sorry, I'm not laughing at you, Doug, but I don't know why you're running. Okay. Let's go to New Jersey, guys. Let's go to the I got Marco Rubio to drop out of the presidential race, and yet I couldn't go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, who made me his bitch, had me all during the transition doing crap, and then sends me to the corner. Chris Christie. Yep, Chris Christie's in this. Like, really? I'm just glad he's on this weight loss diet, and the fact that during COVID, they want to pick on him because he was sitting there on the beach that he closed. I mean, come on, guys. It was his beach. You guys elected him. Oh, does anybody know? Now, come on now. We recruited him to run for governor in a special election. We got Larry Elder. He's back. Hey, guys, look, Larry Elder. If you don't know who he is, he ran against Newsom in the special election. Hey, the recall election. Okay, let's go back to Texas because we have Will Hurd. And anybody heard of Will Hurd? Oh my God. Yeah. Texas congressman. Now, guys, Will not disrespect the next one, but this is a very this is a long shot. So we talk about impeachment, and we talk about the we talk about impeachment, and we have the opportunity to talk about Asa Hutchinson. Asa just happened to be the man who led the impeachment against Clinton. See, listen, you can't make this shit up. Okay, so here's a guy that failed to qualify for the ballot in his last campaign for Michigan governor. So you can't get on the ballot correctly, and now you want to be president? This man's name is Perry Johnson. So I would say that he may not be getting on the ballot. So let's just say we've had this we've had a great time with different people. So the investor and former pharmaceutical company CEO Vivek Ramaswamy, I hope I said that right. Vivek Ramaswamy. This is he's running against wokeness. I believe, I'm not mistaken, I think he's also I think he's from Florida. This is a guy that when Donald Trump went to the courtroom, he stood there and put a video out to say, sign this document that says that if you become president, if you become the Republican nominee, that you're going to pardon Donald Trump. That goes over like a lead balloon, because now everybody says, hey, Vivek, you think he's guilty. You're sending this bad message. Okay. I know this guy's from Florida. The Miami mayor, like, this is not New York. This is not Los Angeles. This is not like, this is Miami, which is big, but I mean, is that really a conservative? Is he really a conservative? Francis Suarez is a moderate. As far as I've ever seen his politics, he's a moderate. But he's the one to jump in. So there you have it. That is your Republican slate for President of the United States, and probably more to come. Thank you very much for joining me on the Morning Constitution. I'm sorry that I bored you this morning, but it was fun talking about something that's going to actually hopefully get you out there to look at. So Washington's speech, let's look at the controversial elections. Let's look at the Electoral College and see why it's important. And like, subscribe, and just share my comments with your friends. Thank you.